Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Contrarians. We have a special panel discussion. So, this is a special episode. This is a little different than our Dark Horse albums and our regular one on one episodes. This was actually a topic brought forth by Peter, who's here today, and was voted on by our Patreons. We had a couple of last minute regrets, so we're a bit of a small group tonight, but I think that's cool, anyways. How's everybody doing tonight?
Right.
Good.
Fantastic.
Everyone's ready to talk about Vinnie Vincent?
Absolutely.
So the idea for this discussion is similar to our Guns N' Roses brilliant or bad discussion. This is going to be about Vinnie Vincent, and the actual title is Genius or Musical Genius or Hack, Musical Hack. So we're kind of going with that same, was this guy brilliant? Was he a bit of a hack? Was he lucky? I think everyone here is you might see some polarizing opinions on this. So I'm interested to see what people think about Vinnie Vincent, but we're going to kind of go around and just talk about what we think about his career, what he contributed or didn't contribute to Kiss, and what he did on his own. Maybe a little bit of what's been going on these recent years with Vinnie. He's got a lot of controversy around him. He's been in a lot of litigation with Kiss over the years, but he also has written some good songs for Kiss. In fact, Joe's background, Lick It Up, there would be no song Lick It Up without Vinnie Vincent. And even the Revenge era, I know he came back and wrote some songs, and that was one of their more favorite albums among Kiss fans. I'm going to throw it over to Nick first. Tell us what you think about Vinnie Vincent, his guitar playing, his songwriting. He's been around the music industry for a long time. He was absent for a while. He kind of came back. He's had some questionable business practices. What do you think about Vinnie Vincent? Was he a musical genius, or was he a musical hack?
Given the place and it's genius or hack, I'll start off by saying, because that's the only two choices. My real vote would be neither, because I think it's somewhere in the middle. But given there are two choices, I'm going to say genius. I'm not a Vinnie Vincent super fan. I haven't imbibed the pink Kool-Aid. I find him more amusing more than anything. I'm always amazed at how much time people spend on him. How much devotion there is to him, how much of a polarizing figure he is. I do get a little bit irritated when I hear, the people have spent money on pre-orders and he doesn't follow through, whether it's guitar or CDs or box sets or whatever. So, but that has nothing to do with, in a sense, that's separate. That's a different thing. But as far as the music part, I'll have to throw my hat in the ring and say genius. Why? He's played with major people throughout his career. He's played with Kiss. He's played with Felix Cavallari from the Rascals. Matter of fact, I had this ready. This is a relic, the Treasure album. Matter of fact, here's the early Mr. Cusano there. There he is. He's played with Danny Hartman back in the 70s. He's a gifted songwriter. He's a gifted guitar player. His style of playing on his albums with the Invasion may not be everyone's cup of tea, but everyone knows that he can play, given what he's done with Kiss on tours he's had with them. But he's given songs to people, or songs have appeared on albums with Laura Nyro and the Bangles and Peter Criss. And it is very difficult as a musician or songwriter to get your music placed anywhere. So he's been able to do that successfully. So he's had major tours, major bands. It's kind of weird. I've actually seen him twice live. I've seen him on the Lick It Up tour with Kiss. Kiss, the songs that they played were at quite a furious pace, but I don't know if Kiss ever sounded heavier when Vinnie was in the band. I mean, there was a very heavy band, very heavy sound. And I saw him with the Invasion opening for Alice Cooper. And of course, they had a great band with the guys who went on to play with Slaughter, and it was a great band. They put on a great show. It was a great package with Alice Cooper. So, I'm in that weird thing where I've actually been able to see the guy. He's been MIA for many years. Again, polarizing figure. Supposed to have shows, they cancel the whole thing, but that's a whole separate topic. I mean, he sounds like he's a walking catastrophe. But that's a different issue. But if you want to just keep it strictly to the music, I'll have to say that. I'll have to say he's the genius. And think about it, Kiss, he co-wrote Love It Loud. He co-wrote Lick It Up, co-wrote Unholy. I mean, those are singles off those albums, and they were successful albums. He had eight songwriting credits off Lick It Up, several, 3 or 4 off of Creatures of the Night, and 3 off of Revenge. That's a pretty good day's work. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks,
John?
Nick. So we got 1 vote for genius. You're kind of more in the middle, but you went that way.
Yeah, I'll go that way.
Cool.
I'll take
Middle could be a vote, I guess.
I'll take the heat.
I'm going to throw it over to John, the music nut. What did you think of Vinnie Vincent? Is he a genius? Is he a hack? Or is this somewhere in the middle?
Okay, before I give my opinion, Nick, when you saw Vinnie Vincent Invasion open for Alice Cooper, I believe you and I are both from Pennsylvania. what venue did you see him at?
I saw him at whatever armory it was in Kingston, Pennsylvania.
We were there together.
There you go.
Pretty freaking cool, huh?
Yeah, someone lit my hair on fire. It was great. I was like a mini Gene Simmons. I was
Is
like,
that you, John? Did you light Nick's hair on fire?
No.
No, I know who did it. No, I know who did it.
Oh, no.
I won't say my age, but let's put it this way: everyone's equilibrium was off.
Ah,
That was a brutal place to see a show, John. But because the sound is terrible, it's like seeing a show in an airplane hangar. But it was a good show.
absolutely. Yeah, I saw 3 shows there, and yeah, the sound there is horrible. It just bounced off all the walls. But that was my 3rd concert, and my first one at the Kingston Armory. I grew up 2 miles from the Kingston Armory.
I can hear it in your voice.
Oh,
That's a little inside joke, guys. Sorry. I can hear it. I can hear it. Nice to meet you. It's kind of like I could tell Joe's from Chicagoland.
there you go.
The northeastern Pennsylvania brogue is similar to the Chicago accent.
Hmm. Absolutely.
I lost mine, but I can pick it up if we talk for another 10 minutes, it'll come back.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So I'm going to lean towards genius here, and also say what more could have there been, because I mean, what has he really done after Revenge in '92? He's kind of like a John Sykes. I mean, how much more could he have done if he kept with it? But reason I'm going to give him the genius label here is he resurrected Kiss. He was the catalyst for heavy metal Kiss. Heavy metal Kiss is so underrated. That was what I grew up on, heavy metal Kiss. There's a little visual for you. Remember BMG Music Service, RCA Music Service, and Columbia Music Service? Those 6 albums for a penny. Well, this was one of my 6. I bought this in the summer of '84. Although Lick It Up was my first Kiss album, that would have been my second. Before Vinnie joined the band, well, as he was a writer and a player on Creatures of the Night, they were struggling commercially, and they were struggling creatively. He was the shot in the arm that they needed, and it was apparent on Creatures and more so on Lick It Up. I think what he brought to that band, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he brought a sense of space. It wasn't just the riff, it was the rhythm carrying the song. Gene or Paul would sing their line, and they weren't singing over a riff, they were just singing over the bass and the drums. That's what you heard on Lick It Up. That's what you heard on Not for the Innocent. That's what you heard on Satan's Sinner. I also think that he gave Gene a shot in the arm with his lyrics, because Gene's always written about sex. But some of those lyrics on those albums that he wrote were very creative, and they weren't all about, a lot of them were still about sex, but they were still really creative. I mentioned Not for the Innocent. I mean, that was Gina's meanest. Same thing with Unholy. That was, as Nick said, that was a co-write. Gene and Vinnie Vincent. He gave him that shot in the arm, and I think after that, like after Vinnie was fired or let go or quit, depending who you talk to, They did one more great heavy metal album with Animalize, and then ever since then, I think they've been a really spotty band. I think they've had a lot of great songs. Most of them were Paul's, and they've just been very hit and miss since then. I think the two albums in the early 80s that Vinnie was involved with, they're two of my 5 favorite Kiss albums. As far as Vinnie Vincent Invasion, I thought the first album was very over the top. It was a fun album, and I still like it. It's still a pretty good album. The second album, I thought the production was terrible, and I thought the ballads carried the album. I thought the rest of the songs just weren't on the same level as anything he had done before. And then on Revenge, I think that's a bit of a spotty album, but I think Unholy and I Just Wanna, which were both Vinnie co-writes, they're two of the best songs on the album. So I'm going to lean towards Genius, but I wish he had done a lot more than he did.
Thanks, John.
Thank
I'm going to
you.
throw it over to Peter next. Peter from Rock Daydream Nation. You've got your own awesome channel. If anybody wants to check out Peter's videos, Rock Daydream Nation, you'll see a lot of familiar faces on there. What did you think? Genius? This was your topic.
Yeah, it is. And
Genius
I'm gonna say he's very good because I chose the topic, so I can. Sorry, I'll get away with it. But he's not a hack. He's got game and he's got talent. He's probably arguably the most talented muso that's ever played in Kiss as a guitarist, as a songwriter. So as Nick previously said, he's got heritage. He goes back to Felix Cavalier from the Rascals, for God's sakes. That's just unbelievable. Nick has sort of gone through the credentials, but he was actually a songwriter on the Paramount studio song set. He was doing songs for Joni and Chachi and Happy Days. So he's got game. He knows how to write a song. He knows how to play the guitar. And I wholeheartedly agree that with this album, started with Creatures of the Night, but with this album, he resurrected Kiss's career because there's some outstanding work. But I don't think he was ever going to last. He's a vehicle. He's a wild spirit. And within the confines of Kiss, which is very controlled, and Paul and Gene like to have it their way or the highway, this guy here was never going to last. But boy, did his star burn brightly for that short period, because Kiss fans just love it. He's just the most interesting story. There's so much tabloid. He has his own conventions, which my fellow colleague will be going into and having a little bit of a chat about. But I find him a totally fascinating character. You could write a movie about him, but I'm not going to talk about the tabloid aspects. I'm going to talk about the more musical aspects. But I think in this album, he works really well because his guitar work was confined within the elements of Kiss. He didn't do the tomato sauce on top. He wasn't going too wild within the confines of the song, where the song served the guitar, not the guitar serving the song. He was brilliant. And this definitely resurrected Kiss's career. So then you have Vinnie Vincent's Invasion, and I think it's almost a minor classic in the hair metal genre. And I don't think a lot of people sort of maybe forget when that came out. It only got to number 64 in the charts in the US Billboard, but it made a major ripple in the Kiss world and the hard rock world. So much so that Gene and Paul told the Kiss Army fanzine, "Don't you publish anything praising Vinnie Vincent," because I think there was a page, there was an article that they were saying, "Congratulations, Vinnie Vincent," and they got the shits. They said, don't you publish anything more about Vinnie Vincent. So it was obviously they were thought, oh, okay, we've got a little bit of competition here. How does it hold up now? It's a wild album. It's experimental. It's a bit over the top, but gee, it's highly enjoyable, and it's the flourishes are there. And what underpins it is he is a really good songwriter. And as shredders go, you compare him to an Yngwie Malmsteen who can't write a song, for his life. I think Vinnie Vincent runs rings around him because he has got a sense of craft. But on that album, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, I think that he was just like a mad scientist in a laboratory. He just went wild. And, you know, the outros are the intros, and the intros are the outros, and the solos. I think he was just let loose. And that's why it probably didn't do well commercially. My opinion, too, is I like the singer. I like Robert Fleischman. And Vinnie always had this thing with Robert Fleischman that he was going to be the Jimmy Page and Robert Fleischman was going to be the Robert Plant, and they were going to do a bit of a Zepp sort of thing. And when I was playing it the other day, I could see that. And so Fleischman's out. There's a contractual issue, which seems to dog Vinnie Vincent all through his career. There's always a contractual issue. The lawyers are always armed up. And he gets into this album. And you've got the Slaughter Band. Again, he's wild, but it's a little bit more confined. It's a bit more commercial, but it's still kind of a minor masterpiece in the hair metal genre. It's a really good album. Glam is everything. And you can sort of see with Slaughter, he's still got that Robert Plant, Jimmy Page fantasy. He wants to play that out. Personalities got involved. We know the rest of the story. And then Vinnie Vincent went into the desert years and then came back. Thought he was going to go back into the fold with Kiss, with Revenge. Write some of the strongest material in years. Agree with you, John, 100%. Unholy, lifting Gene up, because Gene can be the worst lyricist in the world. He's a lazy songwriter and a lyric writer, but you get somebody to kick him up the butt. Yep. And he did some great material. And then the lawyers get armed up. There's a contractual dispute. Vinnie gets excited and thinks that, you know, he wants more and goes above his station. And then we go into the wilderness years and he's like the Howard Hughes of rock and roll. So I find him fascinating. I think he's the most fascinating character in the whole Kiss sort of history. I love reading his stories about him. I read one story that he was doing a Vinnie Vincent Invasion, this album, and he did like 400 takes of a guitar solo. And he was doing it again and again and again. It kept on, you know, and the rest of the guys were saying, come on, Vinnie, you know, and it was sort of like he was almost having a mental breakdown because he just couldn't get it right. So I think there's a bit of perfectionism in him, and that may has held back him creatively, and that probably, you know, sums him up. There's something that has just held him back in his musical career, and whether it's perfectionism or something, there's just some sort of gene that has just you know, sort of withhold him, and he hasn't sort of carried on. So I think he's more on the genius side. He's definitely not a hack. So if it was like on that scale, I think he's more to the genius side, and that's where I would sort of end my analysis.
Nice analysis. Thanks, Peter. Well, I'm going to throw it over to Joe now. You've got all the ammo. You've heard from everybody except me.
Yes.
Maybe I'll go after you, but I'll let you go.
First of all, I'd like to give all hail Peter for bringing up this subject, because I have not been so excited about a subject as this. Nothing pisses me off more than wasted talent. And I've seen it in relatives. I've seen it in friends. I've seen it in Vinnie Vincent. He's a hack. Yes, his work in Kiss was great. Lick It Up is a great album. He co-wrote some great songs on Revenge. Everything outside of that, which the rest of this panel has said, well, let's not think about that. No, that figures into Vinnie Vincent, and that's what makes him a hack. My history of Vinnie Vincent is I was at the University of Iowa in my freshman year. I was actually started dating a girl. She wanted to go to a party, and I find out there's this concert 2 hours away, and I'm like, I'm not going to the party with you. She dumped me for going to see Kiss. So, you know, that's how low on the totem pole Kiss was in 1982. So we drive through snowstorm to Dubuque, Iowa. It was the best concert I've ever seen, but we didn't know if Ace would be there or this new guitarist that, you know, we read about in Kerrang. And it took us a while, and we bought the program, and it had Vinny with the violin bow, which he never used. But anyway, it was a great show. Fast forward to 2017, and I'll fill in all the blanks. But he was at the Kiss Expo, and he comes out of hibernation for over 10 years. There were some wild stories which I'll cover. It was one of the most bizarre weekends of my life. There were people from all over the world that flew there. I met a couple guys from Finland, totally cool, but they flew just to see Vinnie Vincent. The whole thing was pushed back because he showed up late. He promised to deliver on the box set, which he never did. He was very nice, very kind, but it was just a wild weekend. We can go into that later. Why do I think he's a hack? Because there's so many stories about him after his tenure with Kiss. First of all, so he leaves Kiss and you don't hear from him for a couple of years. I think the Invasion album is so over the top. I listened to it again today and I just laugh because he plays so friggin' he sped up the tapes on it. Robert Fleischman sounds like Mickey Mouse. The two best songs are more pop tunes. If they even would have slowed them down, Baby O and Substitute, they'd be a lot better. I heard an interview with Mark Slaughter where he even addresses this when they went on tour with Iron Maiden. He's backstage playing Jeff Beck note for note for Adrian Smith. And Adrian Smith's like, why don't you play like that? And he goes, it's all about, I want to be fast. So one of the definitions of hack is being a mercenary and wasted talent. And that's why I consider him that. Now in the interim, he releases the other album. It's a little more slowed down, but I couldn't get into it. Then he goes and writes some Revenge. And yes, the songs on Revenge that he co-wrote are very good. But after that, it's just a nightmare. He goes through different lawsuits with Kiss. He goes into his Guitar Geddon album. Different record companies are dumping him, and then he goes to these Kiss conventions, and you hear horror stories about that. And then he does become the Howard Hughes of rock and roll, and you read about his trouble with his wives. You don't even want to go into it because one was just really bad. She was found murdered. That's the bottom line. And you heard more about that. And then the dogs and the property in Nashville. You can look that up. I don't want to talk about it right now because it's pretty gross. But I don't know. He just, in his recent history, I couldn't get into the solo albums. And then look, his backup band leaves. They go on their own and put out a great heavy metal, hard rock album. I love that Slaughter album because that's just straight ahead rock and roll. And there's none of this over the top bumblebee guitar playing. So I consider him a hack because it's wasted talent, and he's done a lot of bad things to people, and you can't let that stand. So you go fast forward to this expo that I saw him at, and oh, by the way, you go back to Lick It Up. The one thing that's interesting about Lick It Up is the songwriting is great on there, but one of the best guitar solos played by Rick Derringer. That's weird history as well too, because they found Rick Derringer for Exciter for some reason. But yeah, he has this fan base. He's been doing these. He had a concert booked at Graceland supposedly with Vinny Appice and a bass player, and people had booked flights, bought tickets. He cancels it at the last minute. Then he has these invite only things at the studio in Nashville where only certain people could come in. There's a guy named Mike Brunn out there who actually has a great YouTube channel. Kudos to him. He's the only guy that really gets to interview him during these things. But it's just really bizarre. And that expo I saw him at was, he was very nice, but you could sense after the second day, there was a tension there because of his past. And you realize, people paid big money at the time for this box set that was going to come out, never released it. And then he's saying he's going to bring the box set out and he's going to do double work and everything else. Nothing ever happens. He never follows through on any of his promises. It just overshadows the small time frame of pre-Kiss and in Kiss, where he did show some musical talent, but I think all that talent was wasted, and that's why I consider him a hack. He just treats people it's just really strange. He doesn't treat people right. And I didn't like his solo albums. And I think it's really a testament that his band went off on their own and made a great album without him. So I'm voting Hack. And once again, thank you, Peter, for bringing this up. And if you
No
want to
problem.
continue this conversation, I would love to.
Thanks, Joe. I guess I'll share a little bit. I'm probably in the middle too. Just because I think, like, when I think of somebody like who's a musical genius, I think of somebody like a Frank Zappa, or like even like Paul McCartney as just a genius songwriter. I don't put Vinnie in that camp, but I don't think he's a hack. But Joe brought up a lot of good points. A lot of his, I think, more recent like business dealings, the stories about him ripping off fans. I think Paul tells a story at a Kiss convention. It's on a bootleg somewhere. It's on YouTube somewhere probably, where he was selling guitars to fans that were supposedly played on stage, but were never actually played on stage. Just like things like this. I do think he was a good songwriter for Kiss. I think he wrote some pretty good rock songs. In fact, on Lick It Up, one of the most underrated songs, one of my favorite songs is A Million to One, which he co-wrote. That's a classic to me. That's one of the classic Kiss songs from that era. I wish he stayed in the band for Animalize. I think you would have seen a pretty Animalize kind of is just kind of a pass for me. I think it would have, him being on that album, being a songwriter on that album, would have probably put that over the top for me. I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I know with Vinnie, there was a lot of litigation problems. See, I've gone back and forth on Vinnie through the years. I've been a Kiss fan like all my life, basically. When I was younger, I more drank the Paul and Gene Kool-Aid, and because there was a lot of interviews. I think even on the that Kiss documentary that they put out in the early 90s, Kiss Extreme Close-Up, I think they talked about Vinnie in a negative light, and there was other interviews from that time where they talked about Vinnie in a negative light. And I think I kind of just drank that Kool-Aid and just kind of looked at him as a bit of a goof at that time. But I've gone back and forth. He is just an incredible guitar player. He's a phenomenal guitar player. So one of my favorite Kiss concerts to watch on video is the one from Brazil, the Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. That's an incredible performance. He adds, like, I love the way he plays the Kiss songs that he didn't play on, like Cold Gin and like some of the other Firehouse, and he brings something to those songs, in my opinion. There's not a lot of pro shot footage with Vinnie, unfortunately. Like, there's some bootleg stuff. I think if you go on YouTube, you can find like a pro shot show from Spain that's in pretty decent quality. I have it on bootleg in really bad quality, but that's a show to go out of your way to find. I think it's Madrid, Spain, 83. I think that's the Lick It Up tour. It might be 84. That's a cool show to watch. It's about 50 minutes, so it's not the entire show. He's an incredible guitar player. He's an incredible, like a great songwriter, maybe not a genius songwriter, but I think he fit in with Kiss. And unfortunately, with all the litigation and all of that stuff, and you know what I mean, he kind of has this weird place in Kiss because he kind of wasn't around for very long. He was only around for 2 albums. You know, I would have loved to have seen him at least on Animalize, you know, yeah, and have him maybe been on that Animalize live show, that Pro Shot show that was on MTV. That would have been cool. He was pretty successful with Vinnie Vincent Invasion. He was on MTV. They had a song, I think, on the Nightmare on Elm Street soundtrack. Love Kills, I think, was the one. Yes. You know, he was pretty successful as a solo artist in that era. But I think I don't know, Peter called it perfectionism. I think he was notorious for cracking the whip, I guess. And I think Mark Slaughter has come out in recent years and talked about their tumultuous relationship. And I think Vinnie, or Joe, sorry, I think was it Vinnie or was it Carmine Appice that he had worked with or was supposed to do a show?
Yeah, it was Carmine Appice. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You just had the Sabbath episode yesterday. But yeah. Yeah, it was Carmine Appice. Yeah, it was the lineup from John Sykes' band, Blue Murder.
That
was Tony Franklin was going to play bass, I think.
Yeah.
They were in talk. There's a lot of stories.
Carmine doesn't have good words to say about him. And he's kind of, yeah.
No,
Hates
but
him.
they were going to play together somewhat recently, but I think it started off as one thing, but then the deal kept changing. I think you can hear Carmen talk about this, maybe on the Eddie Trunk show. They talked about this. At one point, it was Vinny didn't even want to practice. He just said, let's just go up on stage the night of and just jam for an hour and a half. And Carmine was kind of like, just jam for an hour and a half. Like, what are you talking about, kind of thing, right? But yeah, a lot of that stuff, the business stuff, the being labeled hard to deal with, that's or hard to work with, and the ripping off fans, that's the kind of stuff I don't like. I was surprised he did the thing with Gene a couple of years ago, and he really looked awkward with a guitar in his hand, which was surprising. But at the same time, I'm not surprised because, you know, Gene, if he can.
Did you see when he tried holding Gene's hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. You know,
There's- Sorry,
the one
go ahead.
thing, like, the thing that always comes up about Vinnie Vincent is he was a great songwriter, and yeah, he wrote some really good songs for Kiss, and Lick It Up did rejuvenate their career. But he lived in Nashville, and like if he was a great songwriter, he'd be making. I mean, guys make money in Nashville if they're good songwriters, whether they're writing for Carrie Underwood or just doing side gigs where they have these kids' parents paying money to do demo tapes. I know I have a family member that did that and a family friend who did that. They paid thousands and thousands of dollars to, you know, get a YouTube video made. But you can make money in Nashville, and I don't know. Again, wasted talent.
Yeah, but I think there are a lot of talented people in life though that don't get, or as soon as you're labeled hard to work with, I think it cuts off a lot of opportunities for you. And I think there probably could have been a lot more opportunities if Vinny didn't try to sue Kiss 100 times. But at the same time, I mean, you could look at it as he claimed he wasn't maybe getting the royalties he should have got, so he was standing up for himself and this and that. But I mean, he's very political when he speaks in interviews. Even back in the 90s, if you see some interviews with him from conventions, he's very political. Like, oh, I love Gene and Paul. He rarely ever says anything out of line about the two of them. Meanwhile, if you ask Paul and Gene about him, they'll say you can go through the years, look at interviews, they say all kinds of things about Vinny. But
Didn't he call Paul mean Mr. Mustard?
He did that.
And then he
Yeah.
retracted.
But even
"Oh,
that's
I didn't
more
mean that.
cute than it is insulting, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Mr. Mustard. He also has, I forgot about this. I don't know if you guys know, he has one songwriting credit on the Bangles album. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
What-
I found
what-
that to be interesting. Yeah. I know.
I've got no words for that one.
Yeah.
he's an interesting cat. At the end of the day, like I said, I think I'm kind of more in the middle. I don't think he's a hack. He has had success on his own with Kiss. They obviously utilized his songwriting skills. They brought him back in Revenge after all those years have gone by and the Bad Blood and all that stuff. I wish he stayed with Kiss a little bit longer, because I think you would have seen some really cool Kiss songs in the mid 80s with Animalize, although I'm a big Bruce fan, so I don't want to, but he was a great songwriter. I don't think he was a genius. I'm more in the middle.
Yeah.
So he's going to be appearing on Memorial Day weekend. There's a big thing in Nashville. I think it's called Creatures Fest. It's going to be Ace Frehley, Peter Criss, Vinnie Vincent, Bruce Kulick,
Right. Yeah.
a bunch of other. I was almost going to go, but we're going to go see McCartney here. But Paul McCartney, I got to do that. But yeah, that should be interesting too. There'll be another chapter in the Vinnie Vincent saga if he shows up, if he actually plays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Joe, if he doesn't turn up, I think that will be it. He'll be irreparably damaged. Even I think people will just draw a line and say that's it. I think this is a potential for a bit of a comeback, because there's a lot of conjecture whether he still has game, whether he can still play. Because there was some footage he went up for a Kiss band.
It was a pre-cruise party.
Cruise, and he was just playing rhythm. He was just strumming the guitar. There was no shredding.
And he had he put a cross. He couldn't.
Yeah.
He just put a cross on his forehead to avoid the reality of the makeup. But.
And when you read sites like Blabbermouth or Metal Sludge, there are people that actually post and have been inside these little listening parties where you pay hundreds of dollars in some sort of hotel in Florida or what, to have the privilege of just talking. To talk with Vinny directly and hear him shred. And these people, because there's no video footage, because it's not allowed. You obviously put your mobile phones in a secured area. say that he can still play. So it's unverified. So big question mark. This could be his big comeback. There's a movie trajectory to all of this. There's just so much tabloid. There's so much ins and outs of this movie. Could you imagine the climax of the movie is this?
What blew my mind? I don't know if anybody here is familiar with the author Chuck Klosterman, but
Yes.
So he put out. I mean, he's a huge Vinnie Vincent fan. He wasn't at this expo in Atlanta, and I thought for sure he would be there because this was like his coming out party. I'm telling you, we can do an episode just on that. It was so weird. There's guys from the podcast guys were fighting with each other, and the Gene Simmons vault just had come out. And then this guy, there's a magic book that this guy said he's going to write, and it's been going on now for over 5 years, and people have given him thousands of dollars, and he keeps on pushing it back. Look up the Kiss Magic book. That's another, So that was, he was there. It was a wild weekend, but people were flying from all over the world, and it was packed. I was lucky enough to get one of the first people to meet Vinnie and not have to deal with all the craziness. But and then they did an acoustic set the next day, and it wasn't very good. I actually left. But
but he's incredibly personable.
He was, like I went up to him and I said, you were part of the greatest concert I've ever been to, and he couldn't be more gracious.
Yeah,
but things have kind of gone off the rails again since then.
Yeah. Can I address the elephant? Sorry.
I was just going to say quick, I'd like to see Vinnie put out a book, and I'd like to read it, although I'm afraid it would probably end up being a little pedestrian. I don't think he would ruffle too many feathers in his book. I think he would fall in line with his interviews over the last couple of decades.
Peter, I want to ask you, and I also want you to bring up the elephant in the room, but I want to ask you,
where's the elephant?
No, Peter, when you brought up that one, is that where he literally he just pissed on his guitar and left? He got so frustrated? Because you were telling that story.
No. I'm going to do the elephant in the room about this whole thing on the internet about him transitioning.
Well, it looked that way. It looked that way at the convention. It was shocking to say the least, but now I don't know. I don't know. It was a shocking sight. Let's just put it that way.
Because they've asked him, and he has been very sort of telling in his responses. So this is another tabloid element, and everyone is, it's part of the story, isn't it? It's just if that is actually true, it would just make a remarkable story.
He's always kind of, I don't know if anybody's ever heard the thing about Michael Jackson. When he speaks in public, he kind of uses a bit of a mousier voice than his real voice. Apparently behind the scenes, Michael Jackson has had more of a, I guess, normal voice. I've got the feeling over the years, Vinnie kind of does the same thing. In the interviews, he kind of tones his voice down a bit, or makes a little more high pitch, or he's kind of like a little more mousy, but I don't think that's his real voice. I think in the early Kiss days, he had a kind of a heavier voice, but then later on you kind of see, especially in the 90s and the convention stuff, I think he seems a little light when he speaks. I have no comment about whether he's transitioning or not.
No, but there's just so much conjecture on the internet, and I thought I'd just have to raise that.
Just to finish my point, I think he is putting on a persona for the cameras and interviews and stuff like this.
But Peter, when he came out, honestly, so Eddie Trunk interviews him, no one has seen him yet. He comes out in this hall room, and there was a collective gasp. We're like, whoa, what are we looking at here? I don't know if it was transitioning. It was just a very shocking appearance. And he had this pantsuit on that Hillary Clinton would wear. Literally.
Did you feel that Eddie Trunk kind of softballed him in that interview a bit?
Yeah, he softballed him. So Vinnie had to he drove from Nashville to Atlanta. So he shows up 2-3 hours late. Then Eddie Trunk has to interview him, and it was softball questions. So the whole convention got pushed back by hours. So I was lucky enough to be one of the first to meet him, because after that, the lines were outside winding around, and nerves were getting frayed. People weren't happy. It was an interesting weekend. Yeah. But Eddie Trunk, I don't know. I thought because people were offering Vinnie Vincent money to come out of, I know a guy who has a podcast, he offered him $1,000 for an interview 5 years before that. And he wanted more money. So yeah. So I thought the interview should have been more, but Eddie Trunk was not very popular there because the convention got pushed back even more and people were just waiting and waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm a Vinnie fan. I don't want to portray that as anything else. I'm a Vinnie fan. I'd love to see him live. He, like I said, like if there's some like live versions of Love Gun that he did that just are incredible. Anybody who can play guitar like that. Like I'm a fan of. He's talented. I don't think anybody can question his talent with a guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
I will, but I think he was talented in Kiss. Outside of Kiss, he wasted his talent.
I'm surprised you don't like the solo albums, Joe. I know
like
they're way over the top, and maybe that's why that appeals to me.
On that first album, and I keep on going back to that interview I listened to with Mark Slaughter, where Adrian Smith's literally saying, "Why don't you play like Jeff Beck? You can play like he's playing, Wired, all the songs off, and he's like, no, I just want to play fast, and the Bumblebee guitar doesn't work for me."
Do you think Kiss got Vinnie to try to get a guitar player that was maybe Eddie Van Halen-ish, but get a guitar player mostly to blow Ace off the stage?
I think they were just desperate to get a guitar player. Honestly. Yeah. No, because they wanted Ace in the band because they lost a ton of money in there too, because their contract with Polygram stipulated they needed 3 members.
I heard that from Kiss himself.
Millions of dollars, yeah.
Does anyone think there's any possibility with the farewell tour that he will make an appearance?
No, because I've heard interviews with Gene and Paul where I believe they've said that Vinnie's would not be welcome on stage. I think they said like Peter, Ace, Bruce, those guys are welcome. I think they basically said Vinnie is not going to happen.
Yeah, and Paul runs the show, obviously, and Paul, I mean, Gene had to sell his vault, so he had him with him, but Stanley will have nothing to do with him.
Yeah, I take that with a grain of salt because what they say and what actually happens so many times, I don't know. I think it all comes back to this climatic Hollywood moment when the comeback, Joe, will it happen? How is it received? Can he still play? Because if he's still got game, he's still got the chops, then he might do something with it. You don't know.
Yeah, you can make money. Definitely. Yeah.
It's going to be a climatic ending.
Question. We've been hearing all the stories, and Joe's related very clearly about Vinnie and all the controversies. I don't know that this may be the 800-pound gorilla. Put the transitioning aside. Why do we have all these stories about Vinnie? I don't want to defame the guy, but isn't the answer that he may not be the most stable persons on the planet?
Oh no, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe that's part of the genius mind. I mean, Eddie Van Halen wasn't stable either, but Eddie, Eddie didn't sabotage his career.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I'm just saying that he does all these things, and I don't think it's because of drug or drink. I just think that there's other things that play with Vinnie that I think Gene has said this more than once. He's his own worst enemy. And I don't know if it's something you can solve with medication or counseling or therapy, and I don't feel like getting sued, but boy, they're just example after example after example. And I think that also plays into Joe's aggravation and consternation about the guy and why we don't hear from him for decades, and why he can't get out there and play with a band, and why he can't even get it together to play a one-off with Carmine and Tony Franklin. So it's like, I can't see this guy ever doing anything, ever. I don't think he'll do it. I don't care what he plays like. He'll never be able to sustain it. It's going to be a one and done, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then to me, that's the sad part, because I don't think anybody is in a position to have influence over him that way.
Well, there's a long history of guitarists that have had a long hiatus, and they've made a comeback, and they just don't go on with it. Jake E. Lee, who's one of my favorite guitarists, he came back with that Cartel album, but that sort of petered out. He still had the chops, still had the game, but just couldn't do it. Maybe it's just too long between drinks.
Well, I think he's been recording. Yeah, that's a great example. I think he's still trying to do it out there, but you're right. I mean, I just think that with Vinny specifically, I just think there's so many layers of issues and problems that if I was, and this is follows Joe's aggravation, would I sign him as a record label, even a small one? No. Would I manage him? No. Would I play in a band with him? No. I wouldn't do it. There's life's too short, right?
If you owned a club, would you pay him his $20,000? Yeah.
No.
Only if he finished the gig.
No, I would. Yeah, if you give a deposit, Joe, you can kiss that goodbye, and then you'll be chasing it. No, I wouldn't do it. So I mean, there's just too much going on upstairs, in my humble opinion. This upstairs.
Yep.
Cool. I'm gonna go around. I have a question for everybody. I think we've pretty much said everything, right? Okay.
Joe's only getting warmed up.
Okay, I've got a question.
We can do another episode. Maybe if Marco doesn't want to do it, maybe Peter, you and I can do it.
Yeah, but I think we all agree he's he's one of the most fascinating Kiss characters. Maybe for all the wrong reason, but he's fascinating.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question for everybody. I'm going to go around and ask everybody. And if you have any final thoughts, you can give final thoughts too. And if you have anything to plug, you can plug it too. But my final question is, Kiss goes into a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay, you can count the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that they went into, or just if Kiss was going to go into another Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tomorrow, should it just be the original 4 members, or would you include Vinnie in the induction? Joe.
Oh no, you got to include everybody. I mean, even the regular Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has like every Bruce Springsteen member ever, which is bullcrap. No, you got to include Bruce Kulick. You got to include Eric Singer, Mark St. John. As much I'm not a fan, definitely Vinnie Vincent, because that was a resurrection of their career. Lick it up. Yeah, all the members have to be in there.
I agree with that completely.
100%. I mean, Grateful Dead, all the members have been formally inducted. I think it's just a farce that not all the members of KISS have been inducted.
I agree. I think they all go in unless the band has some sort of issue. But I think, as Peter said, about 40 people in the Grateful Dead are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You don't even know who they are. So, yeah, bring them all in.
I certainly think there's an argument to be made because, I mean, let's face it, I Love It Loud, Lick It Up. Those are staples in best of KISS albums to this day. There's live staples to this day, right alongside Deuce and Strutter and the Detroit Rock City, those classics. He wrote a couple of songs that are staples today in the live set and on best of albums. I don't know. I would probably, in my opinion, I think if I was going to induct KISS in the Hall of Fame, I think their most famous period is the 70s period, and it's the original lineup. But it just depends on the circumstances, I guess. It would be a tough call for me to put Vinnie in there, but there's definitely an argument to be made. I guess I'm on the fence with that answer as well. But other than that, any final thoughts? If you guys have anything to plug? I know, Peter, we can find you at Rock Daydream Nation.
Yeah, just Rock Daydream Nation. A lot of stuff coming up. Check it out. I just did a record store day vinyl picks yesterday, and I've got a clip dropping tonight with Telegram Sam on Telegram Sam's YouTube channel. It's a really groovy one, just picking our top 5 punk songs from 1976 to 1980, and that was a bit of a gas, so check it out.
Nice. Anybody else have channels they want to plug? Or all right.
I don't have my own channel, but I'm going to be appearing on Ryan's Vinyl Destination and Grant's Rock Warehouse, as well as the Contrarians here. So
awesome.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Contrarians all the way for me. How's that?
Yeah.
I know Joe's been making the rounds too to a lot of the channels, and you've been a staple on the Contrarians as well.
Yeah, and Peter's got a great channel. I've only been on there once. I missed the last one, but no, it's a great channel, and I want to thank Peter again for bringing this up because this really got my juices flowing. I just watched Tyson Fury fight, which was awesome, and then I went right into this. So what a great night. Yeah.
And I've got a final thing to say, Vinny, if you're watching this, put a comment. Tell us what you think.
Or Meredith.
If you like the Contrarians, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We have the Patreon, we have Ko-Fi, we have TeePublic, and yeah, Vinny, if you're out there, I'm a fan of yours, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks, everybody.
All right.